Hi, good afternoon to you. 406 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the show at 4:30, Margot Cleveland joins us from The Federalist. We'll talk about Hunter Biden's finger paintings and just how corrupt that arrangement is. Mary Margaret Olahan is here at 5 o'clock. We'll talk to her about the March for Life today. So many great Americans gathering to defend what should be so easy to defend, keeping babies alive. And at 5:30, Mike McCormick is here. He was once a stenographer officially for Joe Biden. Now he thinks the man should be impeached. We'll talk to him about that and so much more. You can join us at 888-630-9625. 888-630-WMAL. Always appreciate your contributions. The border crisis is rather out of control. We keep trying to get to the bottom of why. One of the people who's been really good on this issue is my next guest. Todd Bensman is a senior national security fellow at the Center for Immigration Studies. He's also the author of the book Overrun, How Joe Biden Unleashed the Greatest Border Crisis in U.S. History. Todd, good to have you with us, sir. Thank you.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So I noticed a few weeks ago now, we had a bunch of Biden administration officials run off to Mexico claiming that they were trying to get to the bottom of our border crisis. And in the immediate wake of that, the Mexican government seemed to indicate that the only way they would help us is if we gave them a ton of money. What has happened since then?
Right. Well, what we don't know is exactly what changed hands, because everybody returned back to their capital cities with a lot of fuzzy platitudes and no details at all about what the horse trading was. But then very shortly after that shuttle diplomacy, we started to see Mexico start to bulldoze migrant camps, to round up thousands of immigrants who were on Mexico's northern border with our border and put them into an unending caravan of buses heading all the way down to Tapachula, which is near the Guatemala border, and also to put them aboard flights to Villahermosa and Tapachula, emptying thousands of them out down there, setting up roadblocks everywhere to block buses going north or vehicles bringing immigrants north, and then putting them back on the road south. And most importantly, in my view, is to suddenly start policing freight train depots where hundreds of thousands of immigrants have been getting free train rides to all points of our border. Now, all of a sudden, the police and federales are blocking all of these train stations and rousting them out of the rail cars when they do find them up there. And so now the numbers have plummeted coming across our border from 12, 13, and 14,000 a day to a still catastrophic 5,000 a day, but 60 and 70% less than they were just in December. That's what Mexico did.
Yeah, so I remember it was 2019. DHS Secretary Jay Johnson said sort of famously that 1,000 a day was a crisis. So if we're still at 5,000, it's cataclysmic still. But it is interesting that the numbers have come down by your survey. This suggests a couple things, but one of them is that Mexico always had the ability to help us out, but hasn't done it until now, have they?
They did it for Donald Trump.
Yes.
Because when Trump was in office, he wasn't into paying cash for those kind of favors. He just brought out the big stick and said, we're going to put progressive trade tariffs on all of your exports to the United States if you don't slow the flow down there. And they did for all 4 of those years, particularly the last couple of years. But the Biden administration has taken a carrots approach, and you know how that works. Once the check is cashed, suddenly, you start to lose interest and incentive in doing things. And the Obrador administration down there routinely would just let 50,000 go at a time and spread them out all along our border so you couldn't see them coming in a big clump. For really what this is all about is, in my opinion, this requires some analysis. But the Biden campaign is in trouble, or perceives that it's in trouble, from polling, showing that this immigration issue, especially when news drones are filming it from above, the thousands and thousands of people milling around being processed in, is absolutely terrible for the campaign. And I think the objective here is to just get rid of those images for about a year, about 8 or 9 months.
Yes.
And so we'll see if that holds. It looks a lot like that. They'll never admit it. Somebody may write a book about it in 5 years or something like that. But for now, Mexico is all of a sudden super interested in slowing the flow of immigration to our border all of a sudden.
So their president, Obrador, has indeed asked for us to cut him some big checks. He wants money. Is it your view that it's likely that some sort of bribe or ransom payment has been made?
Well, we prefer to call it security assistance, or something else. Something for equipment, and you need cash to help with those flights. Probably a lot more cash than it costs. But they're not telling us whether money has actually changed hands. The Obrador government is asking also for some pie in the sky things like, normalize relations with Cuba and end the embargo. That's what we want. Normalize, get rid of the sanctions on Venezuela. But I don't think those are what this is about. I think this is about the $20 billion that they're asking for. So we'll see.
Well, also, it may be, there also may be another kind of simple explanation that's involved with American politics, which is, my impression is Obrador would very much rather have Biden be the American president than Trump. And he's not really made much of a secret about that.
It's true. Obrador is not going to be the president, but his party is going to be in office. His party most definitely, whoever is, and they're probably going to take the presidency, most definitely do not want Donald Trump on the other side with his big stick. Because
Obrador, he's kind of openly advocated election meddling. In fact, he has been instructing Americans of Mexican descent to follow his orders and vote for Democrats. He kind of routinely says that if you're a Mexican, you have to vote for the Democrats, as if somehow he's the Pope of all Mexican descendants. It's crazy, actually. But those are his attitudes towards the American electoral system.
Well, they have their own interests, and they're more than justified in pursuing their interests, which is to keep that remittance money flowing. It's $50, $60 billion a year.
There you go.
Coming out of the U.S., and they want that to continue, obviously. We'll see. That's one of the demands as well. We'll fix this if you legalize a whole bunch of our citizens and normalize them so that they can work. That's one of the asks as well. So keep an eye on proposals, interesting new Mexico-related proposals coming out of the White House's State Department and the White House too. So and this isn't over. The shuttle diplomacy between the two countries is ongoing. It's still happening right now. So I don't think the deals have been finalized. And if something does break down, remember, Obrador has it within his power to undo all of this in a single day. He can call all the troops off, and we'll have those 14,000 a day coming over, Monday.
So we're at the mercy. Fast. We're at their mercy of the Mexican government. So your instincts.
They're in the driver's seat.
Yeah. So your instincts, Todd Bensman, are that this is this will probably be temporary. That this is designed as an election year concealment of the disaster that we have on our border, and that to the extent that it slows down illegal migration into the country, it'll be in the service of getting Biden reelected and then open the floodgates.
Well, let me put it this way. There are CBP officials who are saying that it's their understanding that this is supposed to last through November for 2024. Okay.
Did they really say that? They said this is only through November?
It's uncorroborated, of course, but that's what the understanding is that this is going to go on just for through the election.
It's Customs and Border Protection officials said that. So can you give me more on the sourcing on that? This is stuff you have heard from Customs and Border Protection people?
I have it from a source. I don't have it corroborated with the second one, but if any reporters are listening to this, go for it, man.
Yeah, Todd Bensman just threw out a huge breadcrumb. Please seize it. That's unbelievable. It's just and too perfect. It's like it's crazy. Before I let you go, Todd, what do you make of this Texas dispute with the Biden administration? Texas is only trying to secure 2.5 miles of the border, but boy, I haven't seen the Biden administration disinterested in the border crisis ever, as they are in Texas's decision to try and secure it.
Right. I've been reporting on this conflict. It's a classic state versus federal, states' rights, federal rights conflict, yes. Right? Over the immigration. It's on the ground. You can feel it and see it in the tactics on the ground, where Texas is out there trying to literally block the immigrants at the river's edge, won't let them up past. They put razor wire down there, and then Border Patrol guys would come in there and cut the wire and let them all through and process them into the country. Or bring a forklift in and lift the wire and let them all through. And it's just like this cat and mouse game going on all along certain sectors of the border that are really busy, like Eagle Pass. The immigrants, from their perspective, they run from the gray and tan uniform guys, that's Texas, and they are actively looking for the green uniform guys, because the green uniform guys are the ones that are going to immediately let them into the country. In 24 hours, they'll be in Chicago. That's why it continues. This thing continues on down there. And finally, Texas had this one area, really fortified, heavy in Eagle Pass, and Border Patrol decides to stick a field processing station right smack dab in the middle of it to beckon all of these thousands of immigrants to, rush the barbed wire and get past the tan uniform guys in there. And finally, Texas just said, you guys are kicked out. They booted them all out, all the feds, and built a big wire around, it's called Shelby Park, and won't let the Border Patrol in there anymore. They said, you can operate the way you want to operate, just do it 5 miles downstream from us, and, the immigrants will have to hike down there and do it. You can all do it down there, but you're not going to do it here. And it's just kind of tit for tat like that. This is not over. It's now also in the courtroom. Lots of issues like that are in the courts, whether, Greg Abbott is allowed to lay razor wire like that, is allowed to block.
It's crazy.
Texas just passed a new law where anybody who comes out of the river onto Texas soil can be arrested for trespassing and potentially even at a felony level if they do it a couple times. And that was immediately challenged in court by the Biden administration. And so it's just going on and on like that. But the bigger picture, if I could just real quickly, is, even if Texas was able to completely sew up its border, you still have the problem of Democrat-controlled Arizona, New Mexico, and California. So this really ultimately is a federal issue, because you have all the rest of the border wide open to them, and they're pouring in through Arizona. I think maybe the most are pouring in through Arizona right now.
It's a bad sign. No government that cared about her people would allow their country to be invaded on a daily basis, and we're seeing that happen with unbelievable frequency, even today, even with Mexico playing some games with the numbers. Todd Bensman, thank you very much from the Center for Immigration Studies. Always nice to talk to you, sir. Thank you. Good afternoon to you. 4:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the show, Mary Margaret Olahan is here at 5 o'clock from the Daily Signal and the Independent Women's Forum. She's out there today for the March for Life. We'll get her on the ground reporting about that big march. An awesome event. And then Mike McCormick is with us at 5:30. Former stenographer for Joe Biden, has a new book out on how it's time for Biden to go, to be impeached. We'll talk to Mike about why he has that thought now. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. The Biden family has a very mysterious financial arrangement. Although we are finding out more and more information, Congress continues to do depositions with the people who understand how the money flows in. And they're getting some answers. For more on this, I want to turn to Margot Cleveland now. She's a senior legal correspondent for the Federalist. And she's been writing about that this week. Margot, always good to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks so much, Vince.
Okay, so I've been kind of obsessing over Hunter Biden's relationship with this Hollywood attorney, Kevin Morris, because I think that's one of the most fascinating elements of this whole saga. What are we learning this week?
Sure. So Mr. Morris was questioned by the House, I believe it was yesterday, and the House sent out some kind of top-line takeaways. And a few of the things that he noted was that he had purchased 2 paintings from Hunter before Hunter started going pro with the paintings, having a gallerist. He also helped pay for a lot of his living expenses, and according to Mr. Morris, these are loans, but they're not due until after the next election, 2025, and he may or may not decide to forgive those. We also learned that he had purchased, and this we had gotten from other sources too, I believe it was $875,000 of artwork, and this was actually directly from the gallery that Hunter Biden was selling out of Soho, his artwork. So it's, like you said, it's a rather intriguing scenario that we have with this individual, and it's kind of a fascinating side story. One of the things that I fear, though, is we're going to forget the really troubling pay-to-play with foreign officials and Joe Biden's direct role in it if we get too sucked down this role. But
Sure.
It's definitely intriguing and also makes you wonder of, were they really keeping the books so well? Did Hunter Biden report the revenue from those 2 pictures that he sold back before he had the gallerist? And did they withhold the taxes on this interest-free loan? So there's a lot of tax issues that come up as well.
Definitely. And the IRS whistleblowers said behind closed doors that they were very concerned about this. They thought that this could have amounted to a campaign finance violation because Kevin Morris rolls into the Biden family's life in December of 2019 when he meets Hunter Biden at a donor event. And all of a sudden now all the media refer to them as friends. But boy, this guy is quite a friend. He's given some $5 to $7 million to the Bidens over that time frame. He's calling it loans, but then he turns around and buys art from a guy who's never produced art before, giving ungodly sums of money to the Bidens. And in a way, it strikes me, Margot, that he's basically clearing all of that loan debt by simply, giving them more money in the form of buying the artwork, right?
Right. So the artwork angle of it definitely leaves the sense that he's purchasing it at greatly inflated rates in order to allow Hunter Biden to clear the loan debt. And something else that you said about the campaign finance angle, that this whole connection came about when Morris was introduced to Hunter Biden at a fundraiser in the winter of 2020, so right before the election.
19,
and
that would be. 19.
Was it?
Yeah, it was December 2019 when the two met at a donor event. And then...
I was thinking it was 2020, but I'll have to go back and check my notes. But it was definitely during the campaign when they met.
Right.
And actually, no, you're right, because the email I'm thinking of came in February of 2020 when Morris somehow decided he was going to help Hunter get things cleared up, and he's actually emailing his advisor and some tax attorneys saying, we've got this huge political problem, we've got to get these tax returns in. And less than 2 weeks later, Hunter's guys filed the belated 2017 and 2018 tax returns. Didn't pay the overdue taxes yet. That was something that Morris did, I would say, the following year. It was sometime after that the taxes were paid. But absolutely, that there's something that just had a big whiff that he went from meeting him to all of a sudden financing him. And, it's his money. He earned it, Mr. Morris. If he wants to do that, as long as he complies with the laws, that's fine, but the Bidens have to comply with the laws, too.
Well, that's true.
And given that they haven't, it makes everybody look twice at all of this.
Well, to resolve, though, a massive political issue for the Bidens, the precedent that the left has set is that if you use your money to try and resolve something that could impact you during the campaign, that amounts to a campaign finance violation. So the example I'm thinking of is the non-disclosure agreement that Donald Trump had with Stormy Daniels. They went after Michael Cohen for being involved in that, and they said he committed a campaign finance violation for giving her money in exchange for her not claiming in public that she had some sort of illicit relationship with Trump. And
then I think it was also misreporting it on the documents. So absolutely. And this really just shows, again, it's a double standard every way, shape, or form that you look at this. And you've got Morris sitting there next to Hunter when he shows up at Congress, refuses to abide by the subpoena and puts on this big show. But, he's a Hollywood attorney, so he knows how to craft a scene and make sure that, or based on his associates, how to craft a scene, which is what Hunter was doing when he came to the Hill.
Right, but at its core point, and you're right about, we shouldn't get too distracted by some of the ancillary dramas in this saga, because fundamentally it is about the extent to which Joe Biden sold out the country for his family's enrichment. Absolutely. But this character, Kevin Morris, he's the fixer for the Biden family. This idea that you can say he's a friend of Hunter Biden's is, I don't know how any journalist with a straight face can write that and just credulously believe it. They literally met at a donor event in the heat of the presidential election, and he came to the rescue, and there's emails, as you point out, where he says he's trying to resolve this for political purposes. So I don't, again, and the whole thing is wild.
You add to that what I believe it was Gary Shapley, one of the whistleblowers, said is, if you say that Hunter Biden paid his back taxes, no, he didn't pay them. Somebody else paid him for him. That's not him taking responsibility and paying his taxes. And you have to wonder if the fact that the back taxes were paid had any implications or indications of how they were able to at least originally get that sweetheart deal in place.
Right.
And that it would have been much more problematic criminally. But, we're there now because Hunter is fighting it in California. He's fighting it in Delaware. And he's really got a lot there. I do wonder, though, if the testimony between Kevin Morris and also the art dealer, if that leads to more threads pulling of tax money not reported. Did Hunter report those two paintings he had sold before? The paintings that Morris purchased right from the shop, instead of paying the shop for the $875, what he did is he actually cut him the commission of 40% and supposedly was going to then give Hunter the rest of it, which probably was a loan forgiveness. But did Hunter report that? So I think that we're going to keep seeing more and more come up as more people testify.
Yes, I would think so. Another big and interesting piece of this saga is that Kevin Morris is the man to whom Hunter Biden divested his stake in a Chinese private equity firm. So Hunter owned this 10% stake, I think, in BHR Partners in China. And the New York Post kept hassling the White House, like, hey, when are you gonna divest? Like, when is Hunter gonna divest? And they'd be like, oh, ask Hunter. And finally he does divest to Kevin Morris, the guy who's now financing his entire lifestyle. So, it seems to me that the scandal here is only thickening, Margot.
Right, and I do agree. It's an example of a fixer as opposed to a friend. And who knows, maybe the fixer has become a friend over the time period. I mean, I'd be pretty friendly with the guy going around paying for everything for me and fixing it when I leave rental properties in disarray and taking care of the Chi-Com problem for me. So, but it's the classic example of an outside fixer coming in, and it's just part and parcel of how the Bidens do business, that someone is going to take care of the problems. But again, I want to remind everyone, we already know that Joe Biden directly profited from what Jim Biden and Hunter Biden were doing. We saw the checks. We know that is there. And that's not enough to wake people up. I really don't know what will.
Yeah, they really should. And so kind of the tired line from the media that there's no evidence that Joe Biden did anything wrong or that his family benefited in any way from his time in government, I think that was long ago put to rest, Margot.
It was long ago put to rest. They keep moving what the goalposts are, but it really comes down to they don't care because it's their guy.
Yeah, and so they'll allow it. Amazing. One more thing, if you can help me assess the politics of this. I'm not sure if you have an opinion on it, but I do wonder about whether or not actually impeaching Joe Biden is a good idea politically. Do you have any thoughts about that? Obviously, it strikes me that he deserves it, but is it the right thing to do in an election year?
I don't think from a political standpoint that it is the right thing to do, but I do wish that we would have the evidence brought out and made even more clear, because there's still a lot there. We have a lot, but there is so much more that we do not know. We still don't know who Grassley's whistleblower is, who's totally different than the IRS. And to remind you that only the Hunter Biden part is only half the scandal. The other half of the scandal is the DOJ and the FBI and what they did with their power, which was to protect candidate Biden.
Yes.
And then later President Biden.
So I'm sorry, just to double back over to the Chuck Grassley thing, though, because I want to make sure I understand this. You mentioned that we don't know who his source is, but if I remember correctly, Chuck Grassley's finding was that FD 1023 form that declared that Joe Biden was definitely involved in a bribery scheme in Ukraine. Am I right about that?
Right. And that, it appears, came from a different whistleblower that Grassley has, who also spoke about closing down some 20 sources that had been involved with or somehow knew about things going on with the Bidens. So Grassley has an entire wing of the Biden enterprise that has not yet been revealed. And Grassley's perspective is not on what Joe did wrong, Joe did that was wrong. Grassley is focusing on the FBI and the DOJ. And that, again, is something that has not yet been revealed, that we can continue to move on even though it's an election year. And from a political perspective, I think that would actually hold a lot of weight.
Yes.
Because conservatives know how weaponized they are, and the average Joe and Joanne, they understand it as well, but they don't, I think, know the half of it. So I think that the impeachment inquiry should continue to pull this information together.
So one last piece. So Hunter Biden is set to testify in a closed-door deposition, supposedly on February 28th. We'll see if it actually comes to pass. But the House Republicans have also indicated that a number of Biden family associates are going to testify, including someone called Mervyn Yan. There's Eric Schwerin, Rob Walker, Joe Langston, and very interestingly, for the first time in a long time, Tony Bobulinski is set for a deposition with House investigators. Do you think that this will be a revelatory series of weeks ahead?
I do, and especially Eric, who was the money man. He knew where all the money was coming and going. I think that will help expose quite a bit of information. Tony, as you know, knew a lot of the Joe Biden being involved piece of it.
Right.
But we already know that. It'd be good to have some more to it. What I really want to see more of is the financial records. And that's the part that's hard to refute. You can't, you can ignore it and say there's no evidence, but it isn't like witnesses where you can say they were wrong, they have a vendetta, whatever it happens to be. When you have the bank documents backing it up, that is a lot harder to write off.
All right, Margot Cleveland over at the Federalist, just one of the best on this subject. Thank you so much for digging in and sharing your insights with us today. Thank you, Margot. Good to talk to you. Yeah, we've got the media going absolutely crazy about Trump again because he said recently that, if you get a situation here where the Biden administration is permitted to interfere in the election and to steal the election using the Justice Department, then that's going to cause chaos on the country. That's an obvious point. In fact, Trump said it would cause, he used the word bedlam. Here he is. Listen to this.
They're losing in every poll. They're losing in almost every demographic. Numbers came out today that are really very mind-boggling if you happen to be Joe Biden. And I think they feel this is the way they're going to try and win. And that's not the way it goes. It'll be bedlam in the country. It's a very bad thing. It's a very bad precedent. As we said, it's the opening of a Pandora's box, and that's a very...
Yeah, so that would be awful for the country, says Trump. You know what the media did with that? They said that Trump was advocating for violence, and then when a Washington Post reporter shouted out, "Do you denounce violence? Will you tell your supporters not to be violent?" He didn't answer, so Trump refuses to stop violence. This is the left. They literally contrived a news story out of Trump warning that he wants to see the country be peaceful and not have elections stolen. Isn't that typical? I was going to say amazing, but typical is the way it goes. So guess what Trump's attorneys did in reaction to that? In a court filing overnight, they warned that if the government keeps on abusing its power to hurt their political opponent, it could cause, you ready for the word? Bedlam. Trump's attorneys doubling down on the word that the left lit its hair on fire over. Good for them. Coming up, Mary Margaret Olahan joins us with her perspective on today's big March for Life, even amidst all of that snow.